Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for this week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Our guest today is the senior editor and writer for what many of us call our Michigan Bible. John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine joins us in just a minute or two. First, a few of my thoughts to open the show. We all know who's visiting the Big House this Saturday night. The game will be seen coast to coast on ABC, and the atmosphere will be electric. No matter what Michigan State's record is, how many injuries they have, or the point spread will matter. This is a rivalry game that gets national attention year in and year out. To say the Spartans have had a good run over the last 14 years is an understatement. They are 10-4 over that period. Even though this year's team has struggled, they will show up ready to rock on Saturday night. You can bank on it. My thoughts are that we need to come out and put it to them early and often. Take control of the game physically, mentally, and most importantly, on the scoreboard. I've talked to a lot of you this week, and I keep hearing, don't worry, this one's in the win column, or it's going to be a blowout. Now, I hope so, but I've seen enough of these games in this rivalry to tell you they don't always go as planned or as predicted. Don't take this Spartan team for granted. If we play up to our talent level and don't turn the ball over, I have good vibes about the outcome. My guest today shares my thoughts on what we need to do to win this game. Get out of the gate fast and suck the life right out of them. Up next is editor and writer John Borton from the Wolverine Magazine. So stay with us. Joining us on this week's show as we get ready for that big Saturday night game against Michigan State in the Big House is John Borton from the Wolverine. John, always great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you, Mike. And obviously on a week like this, it just ramps up that much more with the Michigan State squaring off. You know, you talk about Michigan State maybe not playing up to its own expectations so far, but then you go right to throw out the records, talk about the emotion, and you know that weird things happen in this series.
They absolutely do. Michigan has to be all business on Saturday. And, of course, I can't remember how many times in the history of this series, if ever, John, that both teams have been coming off of a bye week. And I always worry about,
being a little bit rusty after the bye. But, when Michigan State's on the menu, I don't think we have to worry as much, do you?
No, absolutely not. And especially given what has happened in this series since Jim Harbaugh has been here and since these last couple of years with Mel Tucker basically earning a $95 million contract over 2 games. And that's putting wins on over Michigan. It's the theme yesterday when these players were talking about it was that bus ride home last year after Michigan gives up the big lead and Michigan State used tempo, used Kenneth Walker, and used a little bit of some home cooking on a couple of the Michigan players weren't mentioning this, but I'm throwing it in there because it was reality that they got a couple of massive breaks through the officiating that led to a very, very long ride home for Michigan players. And so that was kind of what they were talking about, that if they're in position again to step on the gas when they are up, that is the goal.
When we look at this Michigan State team, it's not the same one as last year at all, not even close, John. They struggled on both sides of the ball. They've had injuries, especially on the defensive side. But on offense, from the Spartans, do you see anything that really should concern that Michigan defense?
Well, I do think that they have the ability to throw the football. They've got some good wide receivers. But even in that sense, you're looking at a Michigan State team or strength that plays into one of the strengths of Michigan's defense. Because, you look at that secondary for Michigan and the way it's performed and Michigan's pass rush. If Michigan State isn't able to run the football effectively, as it did very well last year, then you've got a scenario where Michigan has them kind of right where they want them. Yes, they have good receivers, and yes, they can throw the football, but Michigan certainly can cover, and Michigan absolutely can rush the passer. And as the game wears on, and both teams might get a little more weary, that's when Michigan's pass rush is especially effective. And after a few hits on the quarterback, that tends to take its toll.
Well, John, I think one of the concerns in a game like this is Michigan State finding some early success. Even though they're not a good football team right now, this is, as you mentioned, the guys talking about this yesterday, you've got to keep your foot on the gas because Michigan cannot give these guys hope and let them hang around, can they?
No doubt about it, because that's what Michigan State is looking for in a game like this. All of a sudden, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, we haven't been that great this year, but look now at what is happening. Look now, we are in this game, and it only takes one day, and anything can happen on one day, and it is happening because this is Michigan State. And remember the crazy, fluky things that have happened. Everybody brings up the rugby punt game and the final play. And last year with the comeback, this is a Michigan State team that pours everything into this game. That is indeed their Super Bowl. And so, yeah, if you give them a little room, if you give them a little room for confidence, they're going to walk through it and really come out swinging.
Last year, John, watching Peyton Thorne play quarterback for Michigan State, especially against Michigan, I thought he had a really nice game. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he came up big when he needed to. But this year, without a running game, he just does not look the same back there, does he?
No, and that's that one-sided thing that we're talking about. It puts a lot more pressure on Peyton Thorne. And Michigan is in great position to put pressure on him. So I think, yeah, they there's no question they'll come after him. And with Jim Harbaugh was talking yesterday about how that pass rush has developed and how they really are coming in waves this year. It's not just the Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo show who dominated the statistics last year. This year, you could come with a host of different pass rushers that are very effective and can stay fresh because they can rotate in there. They've got guys off the edges. They've got the Iabi Okies of the world that came along very late in the process, almost like that free agent pickup that puts you over the top in an area. Braden McGregor, Mike Morris, you just tick them off, and you realize that this is a Michigan team that can really get after you. That's what Michigan State and Peyton Thorne have to worry about on Saturday night, especially night game. You're going to have a huge whipped up atmosphere in Michigan Stadium. So I know that there will be 110,000 plus ready to see Michigan really get after it on defense and really make life tough for one Peyton Thorne.
Well, defensively, John, the Spartans have had a lot of injuries this year. Snow out for the season, but they're getting healthy now, heading into the bye week. They had Jacob Slade back against Wisconsin, Xavier Henderson, safety, and they're getting solid play from Jacoby Windman and Simeon Barrow. If this defense has a strength, it's stopping the run. So I have a feeling Michigan will come out and run right at them out of the gate, don't you?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, if you are that good, prove it. Same thing they said to Penn State. Okay, you're fifth in the nation at stopping the run. Let's see about that. You've only given up 399 yards all year on defense. Let's see about it. And they did see about it. I mean, it was Michigan ran wild on Penn State. I think they will probe that. They will test that and see if they can't do the same thing. But I will say this. I think that the game plan will be somewhat different in that Michigan State's pass defense has been highly suspect throughout the year so far. And certainly Michigan has the ability to throw the ball. They have not really leaned on throwing downfield a whole lot, but they can throw the football. I mean, they've got a quarterback, and partly this is maybe the safety first approach that they've taken, but J.J. McCarthy has got the best passing percentage or completion percentage in the country. That's another bad combination for Michigan State when you've struggled defending the pass and you've got a guy that can use his legs and create and throw the football. I don't think it's going to be as much of a lopsided run-pass dynamic as you saw against Penn State. I think that Michigan is going to throw the football more and throw it effectively.
Well, for anyone, John, that has watched both of these teams play this year, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who thinks Michigan State really has a chance in this game. But, through the years, and if you've been around long enough, especially recently, strange things tend to happen in this game if you don't come ready, don't they?
There's no question about it. And we've mentioned a couple of those, but that's exactly the case. And you've seen it over and over. I think the stranger things tend to happen up in East Lansing in one way, but again, we talk about that last play, and Big Ten Network is running that now over and over, and the reactions to it. And, you can dial it all the way back to 1990 and Desmond Howard getting tripped in the end zone when Michigan was number one. It's one of those things where emotion is such a big driver in this game, and it can lead to a lot of crazy things happening. And Michigan State points to this game more than any other. It's been pointed out that Michigan State doesn't really have an Ohio State like Michigan does. And so there's no divided attention as much. They play Ohio State, but it's not the same in terms of rivalry. So they plan for this, they push for this, they talk about it all year, they focus on it, they obsess on it. And Michigan has to really match some of that. And I would say that Michigan is in a better position to do so this year because of what has happened the last couple of years. Jim Harbaugh I think he was careful in stating it, but he said that just that they really, really want to win this game. Well, that's a foregone conclusion. You know that they really want to win it, but I think there's a desperation there as we talk to Michigan players after the last couple of seasons.
Well, and I think this is the 15th anniversary of the game in East Lansing where Mike Hart made his now famous little brother comments. And the Spartans are 10-4, I think, in the series since then. So I think that's correct, 10-4. But whatever it is, they've had quite a run since that day, haven't they?
They have, and I think that has less to do with Mike Hart's comments, which now he talks about his backs now are much more judicious in what they have to say than he was at that time. So, he takes a little ownership as to maybe I talked a little more than I should have in certain spots. But I really think it had a lot more to do with the fact that at the same time, Michigan State was building a very, very solid program, and particularly a tremendous defense under Mark D'Antonio. And at the same time, Michigan was taking a pretty good-sized dip in its own fortunes. I really think that has more to do with it than anything anyone has said. But Michigan State, at the same time, they are masters of the chip on the shoulder. They're masters of taking any slight, any perceived insult, and just throwing it onto the fire in terms of getting ready to play with maybe excessive emotion at times in this game, and sometimes that can come back to burn you. If Michigan is playing well, you'll see the personal fouls tend to pile up, but we have seen it work. It gets right back to what we were talking about. If Michigan takes away the hope early and is as effective as it has been in scoring early, that first possession of the second half, they've been very, very good at executing and getting that done. If they start to do that, then I can see this being a more lopsided game.
Well, John, I think most of us who've grown up in this state and watched this rivalry have our favorite moment or game in the series. Mine is the triple overtime game, which was on October 30th of 2004, so almost 18 years ago to the day this weekend. Now, it wasn't a great game for all of us who were there and remember it, but the triple overtime was amazing. And I remember the game started at, I think it was near 80 degrees at kickoff, and it was freezing as we got into triple overtime. And at that time, I think that was the loudest I had ever heard the Big House. It was so much fun and just an incredible ending. But what game or games in this rivalry stand out to you, John?
Well, and I certainly agree with that triple overtime game as being one of the most thrilling endings for Michigan State, especially if you're on the Michigan side of things. But as I look at that game, it's like, okay, it was a really, really great final 8 minutes in overtime. Up until then, it was a lopsided mess for Michigan. But no doubt that one stands out. I would say right at the top for me would be the 97 game, because Michigan rolls in with so much on the line. They could feel it by then that they put away Notre Dame. They'd come back big against Iowa. And all of a sudden, you have Michigan State in East Lansing, and they are hoping to pull off the big upset. I like they're hoping to pull it off this year. If they could put that first dent in a Michigan undefeated season thus far, that would make their year. And the way Michigan just dominated that game, and you think of the highlight play that is still shown regularly on national TV with Charles Woodson soaring above all to make the one-handed interception on the sideline. It's just that one really, I think, stands out, and it became one of the pieces of that national championship puzzle, and that gives it even more weight in retrospect.
Well, there have been so many big plays, of course, in this rivalry series. You could just go on and tick them off. But this Saturday, of course, it's a night game, and I think when we looked at the schedule this year, we pretty much all thought this would be the night game. Only the second in the history of this series. I was talking to Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal yesterday, and he said, because so many of the games were 3:30 kickoffs through the years, we tend in our memories to think of other games as night games, but this is really the second night game in the series, and it always gets big ratings when Michigan plays Michigan State, and it should be just a crazy atmosphere on Saturday night, John.
No doubt about it. I think it's been dampened a little bit on the Michigan State side. You haven't heard as much from Spartan fans just because, you had that 4 weeks in a row where Washington, Minnesota, Maryland, and Ohio State knocked off the Spartans consecutively, and it was just kind of a downward spiral. So it might have lost a little bit there. I think it's probably good for Michigan that Michigan State got that double overtime homecoming win against Wisconsin, because a little bit of a reminder that, hey, this team is still capable. Not Wisconsin's best year by any means, but Michigan State is still capable of rising up and knocking somebody off. And so I think if you're Michigan, you feel like you should have the advantage, and some would say a serious advantage in this game, and yet what's happened in the past. If you're Michigan State, you probably drew from that a little bit, that Wisconsin game, a little bit of, okay, well, maybe we can come back to life here, and if you pull this off, get back to a 500 record on the season, and all of those kinds of things. Quite frankly, the heat is suddenly on Mel Tucker, and just in what the way this season has gone downhill after a very good season last year. I think that when you look at this game, when you look at the emotions of it, so many things weigh in Michigan's favor, but again, it's such a game of emotion. If Michigan State catches that break early, maybe you get the tipped pass, it gets picked off, and Michigan State gets an early touchdown, or just the things that can play to the underdog psyche. It's so big. Again, that Michigan gets off to a really good start in this one.
John, Jim mentioned at his presser that Eric All had back surgery last week, and he's out for the season, which I think all of us expected. And what a tough break for the kid, because, he was primed for a big season, and he would have been a high-round draft pick, wouldn't he?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, eventually he may still be, but we're going to have to see about that. The question now becomes, does he play his last game, not just this season, but in a Michigan uniform? Does he shut it down? Does he decide to, heal up, and then whether the timetable would even allow him to try and prepare for this draft coming up? We're going to see, but just best wishes for the young man who has done a lot in a short time in a Michigan uniform to get better. He was voted captain this year, and I know he was looking forward to just a huge year for the Wolverines. Michigan has certainly missed him, although you've got Luke Schoonmaker, who has stepped in as that go-to tight end. You think of everything that Eric All experienced over the last year, that Penn State game where he rose up. He didn't make the play he does at the end of that thing. You probably don't have a Big Ten championship.
Right.
And so that's huge. Becoming a captain was huge. And this is a tough break, no question. This is on the level of the David Ojabo postseason injury on Pro Day that potentially could affect you. Ojabo has come back. We expect Eric All to do the same, but like I said, best wishes to that young man as he pursues what'll be, I'm sure, a measured and careful comeback.
Well, John, if Michigan takes care of business against the Spartans on Saturday, we have 4 games left, so it's on to Rutgers, then home for Nebraska and Illinois, and we know anything can happen. But right now, that Illinois game is shaping up to be a big-time game a week before the trip to Columbus, isn't it?
Yes, well placed for Illinois because you're going to have so many people talking about potentially undefeated Ohio State against potentially undefeated Michigan. And here are the Illini with the best scoring defense in the nation or close to it. And, Brett Bielema has those guys playing with confidence, with swagger. They're all whipped up to suddenly be the best in the West. And, it's that will be on its face. Certainly if Michigan gets by Michigan State, the remaining biggest wall before you get to Ohio State. I picked before the season that Michigan goes into Columbus undefeated. I'm standing by that, but there are certainly some challenges to make that happen. And the first one, of course, starts on Saturday night.
Yeah, and Illinois could roll into the Big House on that Saturday with the West pretty much wrapped up if they win the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
it's crazy how mixed up it's been and the scramble that's on. But I just, that's life in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
You look at an East that has been so dominant over the West, and I still think that Michigan and Ohio State are just in another league than you had the big challenger in Penn State that was going to be maybe that second team, but got smacked down pretty hard by Michigan. In the West, you've got this wild scramble that anybody, it's seeming like there's 5 teams that could still win it. Illinois starting to emerge, but the way things have gone, Minnesota was doing that and then gets smacked down. Purdue for a little bit. You just don't know.
Well, final question before we let you get away, John. As well as this Michigan team has played on both sides of the ball through the first 7 games, when I watch, I really do believe they have more to show, that the best is yet to come. Do you share those feelings?
I do, and I think they've certainly shown their ability to run the football. I think they have not demonstrated to the degree possible yet their downfield passing abilities. J.J. McCarthy certainly has the arm for it, and they have the receivers. I think as you go along, you're going to see more of that. They're going to have to bring out more of that. They will need it. Maybe even in this game on Saturday. Certainly when you go to Columbus and you're facing a Buckeye defense that will stack up against that run. I think that the best is yet to come from Michigan. There's no doubt. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to win every game. But once you get into this far into the season, 7 games, and you're coming off your most resounding win of that season against Penn State, they have another chance to make another statement on Saturday night. I really think that this team is revved up to reach even greater heights coming down the stretch and preparing to take on the Buckeyes.
First things first, take care of Michigan State on Saturday. Again, a big night game, coast-to-coast television, and the rivalry, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week has been John Borton from the Wolverine. John, always a pleasure having you on the show. My listeners love hearing what you have to say, and we look forward to that next visit.
I do as well. Thanks, Mike.
On Quick Hits today, we're coming off the bye week, and for week number 8 in the season, we are in pretty darn good health. At his presser on Monday, Jim said, "We want to win this game. It's that simple. We know what it means." He said everyone in that locker room wants this game. Now, he was very subdued, but you know he is laser focused on Saturday night. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan is 71-38 against the Spartans, and there have also been 5 ties. The first meeting was on October 12th of 1898 in Ann Arbor, a 39-0 Michigan win. Last year, we remember the outcome all too well. Michigan lost in East Lansing on October 30th, 37-33. Mel Tucker is in his 3rd year as head man in East Lansing. His record is 16-11. Last year, the Spartans were 11-2 overall, 7-2 in Big Ten play, and they finished 3rd in the East. They finished the season with a 31-21 win over Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl. They returned 5 starters on offense, 8 on defense. They are 3-4 heading into this Saturday night's game. The weatherman says we should have perfect football weather on Saturday night, light winds with temps in the upper 50s at kickoff, and there is very little chance of rain, subject to change, as all of us in Michigan know all too well. Even though I'll be nervous when this one kicks off, I'll also be confident at the same time. I respect Michigan State and know anything is possible in rivalry games, but I think this year is payback time for the last 2 years. It should be a great environment and opportunity for us to lay one on them in prime time. Next week, we're back on the road against Rutgers. On our Visitors Edition Tuesday, my scheduled guest is Rutgers beat writer James Cratch from the Newark Star-Ledger. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day show, we'll be joined by beat writer Aaron McMahon from MLive. So tell your family and friends about the show, and make sure you tune in again next week. That does it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat Sparty. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!